hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, Low Nose Boxing. And first and foremost, I want to give a shout out to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. If it wasn't for him, none of this would even be possible. What we're going to talk about right now are wins that aged well and wins that did not age well. And what I mean by that is, for example, Floyd Mayweather Jr., right? He beat Canelo Alvarez. He beat him in 2013. He dominated him 10 rounds to 2. But Canelo Alvarez went on to become a legend. Canelo Alvarez arguably is the greatest Mexican fighter of all time. Forget all that. Canelo Alvarez is one of the greatest fighters of all time, hands down. So Floyd Mayweather's win over Canelo Alvarez aged well. At first, Floyd got a little criticism behind it. The critics were saying that Canelo Alvarez was young, green, inexperienced. But we see what type of fighter that Canelo Alvarez became. So that's a win that aged well for Floyd Mayweather, right? Another example, back in the day, Salvador Sanchez, he beat and stopped Azuma Nelson when Azuma Nelson was a young fighter coming up the ranks. He was undefeated, right? Salvador Sanchez, to my knowledge, is the only guy to actually stop Azuma Nelson, right? But Azuma Nelson went on to become a legend. One of the greatest fighters ever, the greatest African fighter of all time. That's a win that aged well. I'm going back to Floyd Mayweather again. Floyd Mayweather has more wins. He has more wins that aged well. He beat Diego Corrales. Well, Diego Corrales went on to accomplish more greatness, more accolades. Floyd Mayweather's victory over Miguel Cotto, that's a win that also aged well for Floyd Mayweather because Miguel Cotto went on to become a 4-division world champion. Floyd Mayweather beating Manny Pacquiao is a win that also aged well because Manny Pacquiao went on later in his career to beat a young undefeated Keith one-time Thurman. Floyd Mayweather beat Juan Manuel Marquez, who went on to knock out Manny Pacquiao. So Floyd Mayweather has quite a few wins under his resume that aged well. Felix Tito Trinidad defeated Fernando Vargas, right? Fernando Vargas went on to become a world champion again, but then got knocked out by Oscar De La Hoya. He got knocked out by Sugar Shane Mosley and lost a tough, close fight to Ricardo Mayorga, right? Ricardo Mayorga, personally, to me, is not a fighter on the level of Fernando Vargas. So that's a fight that did not age well for Felix Trinidad. Danny Garcia defeated Lucas Matthysse. And that fight, that win did not really age that well, according to the critics, because Lucas Matthysse eventually went on to get stopped for the first time in his career. He got stopped by Victor Postol, who's not even considered a big puncher, right? And then he got destroyed by Manny Pacquiao. But see, me, unlike these fans, these critics, these fans of man that just want to sit there and belittle fighters over losses, I don't do that. I don't carry it that way. Because it's about, are you going to look at the glass half full or half empty? I like to look at it half full. So for me, it doesn't take away the win, regardless to what happened later on. I like to look at what happened prior, leading to that fight. Example, Fernando Vargas, yes, he was never the same fighter after losing to Felix Trinidad. But going into that fight, Fernando Vargas, with less than 20 fights, defeated Winky Wright, who eventually went on to beat Felix Trinidad. He also defeated Ike Bazooka Corte, who gave Oscar De La Hoya a very, very tough fight. He also stopped Yuri Boy Campos and Raul Marquez. So going into that fight, Fernando Vargas had momentum going into that fight. So I don't look at it as Trinidad beat somebody that was overrated. No. Sometimes in boxing, fighters get demoralized mentally and physically after a loss, and some fighters don't. which brings me back to a previous topic that I made in one of my older videos where I was talking about fighters that were able to bounce back from losses and fighters that weren't able to bounce back from losses, because this is a tough sport. Guys get demoralized. Now, Danny Garcia beating Lucas Matthysse. Like I said, Matthysse went out and got stopped by Victor Postol just a few fights after losing to Danny Garcia, right? But leading into the Danny Garcia fight, Lucas Matthysse had a lot of momentum going into that fight. He had 2 close losses to Zab Judah and Devin Alexander. Very questionable losses where he put both guys down. And going into the Danny Garcia fight, Lucas Matthysse was knocking dudes out left and right. Lucas Matthysse knocked out Lamont Peterson in 3 rounds. And Lamont Peterson went on to give Danny Garcia one hell of a fight. So once again, I'm going by what they did leading into the fight rather than what happened afterwards. Devin Haney, for instance. And big shout outs to my boy Punt Drunk Boxing, because he made a video talking about Devin Haney's victory over Jojo Diaz and how Devin Haney's biggest wins are not really aging that well. Shout out to Punt Drunk, because of that video right there inspired me to make this topic right now. Now, as far as Jojo Diaz goes, yes, after losing to Devin Haney, Jojo Diaz got beat twice, back to back. Most recently last Saturday. But going into the Devin Haney fight, Jojo Diaz did beat Javier Fortuna, and he also beat one of my personal favorite fighters, Tevin Farmer. Shout out to Philly. You know what I mean? North Philly in the house. Tevin Farmer. Yeah, so Jojo Diaz, it doesn't take away from what Devin Haney did, because Devin Haney beat Jojo Diaz. And like I mentioned earlier, sometimes fighters get demoralized mentally and physically. Devin Haney is not the kind of guy to really beat you up and knock you out and punish you, demoralize you physically, but he could demoralize you mentally, right? Teofimo Lopez defeated Vasyl Lomachenko. Everybody knows leading into that fight, Vasyl Lomachenko is a walking Hall of Famer. After Teofimo Lopez beat Lomachenko, Lomachenko turned around and destroyed Nakatani and Richard Comey. That's a win that aged well for Teofimo Lopez. However, Teofimo Lopez has a win that did not age well, and that was when he fought Nakatani. That's a fight that went 12 rounds. That's a fight where Teofimo struggled in that fight. But yet Nakatani turned around and fought Lomachenko and got destroyed. And then he fought the bull that's about to fight Shakur Stevenson, the Japanese guy, I don't know his name. He got destroyed. So that's a win that did not age well for Teofimo Lopez. But it doesn't take away from the win, because Teofimo Lopez did punish Nakatani, even though it wasn't a great performance. Nakatani took a lot of punishment in that fight. So once again, fighters do get demoralized mentally and physically. You got to be headstrong to bounce back. Take Roberto Duran, for instance. Roberto Duran lost to Sugar Ray Leonard, right? The infamous No Mas. The man gave up. That demoralized him mentally. After that fight, Roberto Duran wasn't the same. He took some losses and then got thoroughly outboxed by Wilfredo Benitez. But what did Roberto Duran do? He did some soul searching. He sucked it up, went to the drawing board, came back, and accomplished more greatness. Defeated Davey Moore, defeated Pepino Cuevas, and eventually moved up to 160 to beat Iran Barkley. Roberto Duran is a fighter that was able to turn it around. I know I'm all over the place because I'm talking about wins that age well, wins that didn't age well. Now I'm talking about fighters that bounced back and fighters that weren't able to bounce back. But it all ties into the same topic. Another fight that aged well, another victory that aged well, was Lomachenko defeating Gary Russell. Gary Russell went on to become a world champion for the second time after that fight. And he was holding the belt down for a while. Gary Russell was highly avoided by many fighters in his division until he lost, which was, I think, last year. He had an injury. Gervonta Davis's win over Mario Barrios, that's a win that aged well for Gervonta Davis, because Mario Barrios went up to 147 and went 12 rounds with Keith Thurman. Did not get knocked out. And he hurt Keith Thurman in that fight. But Gervonta Davis, who started his career at 130 pounds, knocked Mario Barrios out. Jose Pedraza the guy that Gervonta Davis beat for his first world title, that's a win that also aged pretty well as well. Because Jose Pedraza went on to become a world champion again in another weight class at 135 pounds. And even though he's not really on the top elite level, but the losses that he suffered were competitive. He was never destroyed the way that he was destroyed when he faced Gervonta Tank Davis. So that's definitely a win that aged well. Another win that aged well, speaking of Jose Pedraza, he beat Tevin Farmer, right? He stopped Tevin Farmer earlier in Tevin Farmer's career. But Tevin Farmer turned around to become a world champion. So that's another win that aged well. So once again, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel. It was a pleasure sharing some boxing knowledge with y'all. I'm out.